Marketing is more convoluted than ever. If teams are trying to figure out what to do with their limited energy, they're confronted with extensive channels, an increasing velocity of assets, and then all kinds of people from different backgrounds in their company who think they know what they're doing, but really don't. So today, we're gonna talk through what people who lead marketing teams and are on marketing teams need to consider to succeed in 2025 and beyond, and how to actually build operations at work. Clayton and I run a newsletter called Hyper, where we focus on brand strategy, and we're gonna go around New York City today talking to some of our favorite people who work deep within marketing and performance marketing and in strategy to bring you a number of tactics and actual strategies that you can use as you plan for the company you work for or even your own brand. So Clayton, I know one of the brands that we talk a lot about is On Running. I want to get a little background as to why you think they've been doing a great job with marketing.
One of the things that On has done best has gone from staying in their lane, making a core product really, really well, to expanding into new horizons, whether it's inking partnerships with Zendaya and FKA Twigs, to their tennis partnership with the up-and-coming Ben Shelton.
And so one of the things that I've always liked about them, it actually made me transition from not really liking the brand to actually like owning it and being a fan, is the collaboration. So we've seen Post-Archive Faction is one of my favorites. It's like a Korean streetwear brand you wouldn't expect. In fact, it's something you would have thought like Nike would have done. What are some of your favorites that they've hit?
I think one of the eye-catching ones was the Loewe partnership that seemed out of left field, but they've gone from being a brand who has shown they can make a core product really well into stealing market share from a brand like Nike.
And they've done this by really focusing on their product, specializing in their niche, but then adding partnerships and collaborations with a cultural layer that have really been thoughtful and kind of moved from their core like into these new segments, allowed them to catch some cultural traction and attract new users. And whether you're a big brand or a small brand, this idea that you have your world and your product, and you have all of these things you can connect the dots on, like as you expand, and that world can be from massive celebrity all the way down to like up and coming athlete to like oddball global brand, as long as it kind of tells your story and does it, is something I think everyone should be thinking about. But speaking of global brands, another one that I think everyone on the internet likes to talk about, and just dropped a campaign yesterday as we go into film this video, is Jacquemus. Tell us a bit about what you like about their strategy.
Jacquemus has arguably become one of the most important new luxury brands of our time. Simon Port, the founder, has been building this from 2009 onward, and one of the things that stands out about Jacquemus is they just know how to be in the right places with the right people in the right marketing moments. From their huge campaigns with Nike that they've done, in-person activations, supersizing some of the retail spaces and the products within them, to their crazy runway shows during Paris Fashion Week with the red carpet. Jacquemus has been an incredible creative reference for many brands because of the use of models and campaigns.
And these themes, you'll see they'll roll out big items, or they'll bring out the areas they open stores in. But what I like to bring them up, everyone says, oh, Jacquemus does these crazy marketing, but we can never do that. I'm like, well, let's break it down to its tactics. When they open a new store, they release like content surrounding the store, about the surrounding area. They think about the design and implementation of that, and they basically launch a campaign at the same time. So whether you do some elaborate strategy like that or not, you can at least think about your exact initiatives in a similar way. What else has really struck you about the brand?
One of the things that's been interesting to see is how they build a whole universe around a specific campaign or a collection drop. So their Saint-Tropez takeover was one of the most interesting pop-ups that I've seen, from some of the beach shots that they did to building a whole restaurant by the water.
These are like obviously big brands. A lot of people say, hey, I work at a software company, I work at a services company. And so we wanted to talk and give some examples of what we think is kind of best in class at building some of these universes. But in these conversations we're gonna have in this video, we're gonna get super tactical. So we're gonna sit down with Dara Denny, who is a known performance marketer, who's really gonna talk about, hey, if you wanna actually get started making great meta creative, like how do you do it? And then we're also gonna talk to my friend Ashwin, who is a kind of noted brand strategist and has worked with brands kind of small and large, about like what modern marketing really feels like, and then continue throughout this series of just exploring all these concepts. This one's very tactical. Some of the kind of art direction, creative direction videos we do will be a little bit more expansive. We're excited to take y'all along on the journey and hope you learn a lot along the way. So we're here with the master of modern marketing. He told us that this is the real New York. All the commerce in New York is down here in Dumbo. So we are with him to go find said commerce and see what happens.
Let me show you around. So we're at one of my favorite stores, Pet Promise, which is pet food and supplies. This is one of the first pet food locations in New York City.
How do they stand out from a messaging and brand perspective?
Well, as you can see, they are a little bit low-key and underrated. They keep their storefront hidden behind tons of construction and trash cans.
So we talk a lot and make a lot of content about like what brands should think about inside the modern era. If you are approaching just a marketing plan in general in 2025 as an existing company, like what are some key things to think about?
I mean, we talk about this all the time, but really thinking about everything you do from a social first standpoint. So thinking about, hey, this is a new product that we're launching, this is a new campaign that we're launching. How do you amplify all of those efforts through social? And working backwards, we talk about this idea of like, what is the hook for the concept, right?
Yeah.
What is this like 3-second thing that gets people to stop and pay attention? And how do you blow that out into a campaign?
So besides social, kind of what are the other things that like help brands stand out in kind of this modern era? What if you were walking into a brand right now, if their social content was where it needs to be, where else are you looking to find some alpha?
It's thinking about in every single one of your touch points, how can you do things differently and stand out? So in your performance marketing, in your packaging, in your retail experience, in your customer service. I mean, we were talking probably last year, I was talking about this customer service experience I had with this shoe brand, Beckett Simonon, right? And their customer experience, I was basically like, hey, your shoes are coming a little bit too late for me, so I just want to cancel this order. They got back to me within 2 hours with 7 different options that we could go with there. And they gave me like great discounts, they gave me great options, but they went above and beyond what you would traditionally expect from customer service. And why I thought that was so interesting is, number one, it's made me an evangelist for the brand. But number two, I then just got on social and I made a quick video about this. I was like, this is what great customer service looks like, because it is so unexpected these days, right? Everyone takes their customer service team, they outsource them, they give them an SOP, and they give you very canned responses. Whereas this one is like a human who works at Beckett Simonon who is like, loves the brand and loves the customers. And it was just an outrageous.
So we are here with one of my favorite actual useful marketing creators. There's plenty of people that make content about it, but very few who are like, here's this actionable step you should use with your team tomorrow. I would love to just hear a little bit from you in your own words about the kind of content you make and a bit of your background.
Absolutely. So my name is Dara Denny, and I make content for small businesses that are getting up and started on Meta ads. And the way that I like to think about it is I am consistently making content for who I was 6 months ago. So if it's a certain strategy or tactic on the creative end particularly is what I'm excited about. That's really who I'm making content for.
You talk to a lot of marketing orgs, you help people work through their performance marketing, other things. Now that it's more holistic, where you have to think about creators, you have to think about influencer, you have to think about marketing, how do you see in this year, where does all this live? Is it a separate team for performance and for social and for others? Is it one team? Do executives need to be more involved? How do modern teams that you see doing well, how are they built?
Modern teams have a performance creative team. I've worked on many different setups. Sometimes they would put the performance creative team on the growth team. Sometimes they would put it on the brand marketing team. And I've seen that the best brands right now are really starting to build up those teams, especially for content, to fuel those engines. On the brand marketing team, it can get really lost in the sauce of influencer with other campaigns, with the e-commerce and D2C websites or ancillary things that they're doing. And then on the growth side, they're so in the numbers, and they are ultimately the ones that are responsible for growth. So it's actually kind of hard for the growth team to, if there's a problem on Meta, to pivot and try and work on that content. So I find the best teams right now are really starting to invest a lot into performance creative and have those as standalone teams that work very, very closely with growth and are able to pull resources from the brand marketing team to help match tone and values. And, it's all, working together, but
it's funny to putting creatives in all these different the different places where, to your point, brand side maybe too much focused on the wrong things. Performance side may not understand how to actually work with creatives to let ideas have a chance to reach. The social team may not want to be incentivized the same way the performance team is. It's tough. But this year, I think we both talked a bit off camera about some of the themes that are happening this year. What's the biggest theme that you see in 2025 all the teams are talking about?
I mean, the biggest theme is creative volume. It is the number one thing that is top of mind, especially for brands at scale. They probably need double or triple the amount of creative that they have needed in the last year.
So give me an example of kind of how that breaks down. So we say, hey, they need more creative. Is that adjusted ad units or types? advice or different, like any kind of buckets or categories for someone out there, who's like saying, oh man, like I've heard this before, or I know my team needs this, but I'm unsure really what that is. We'd just love some context.
The first, phrase we're going to hear is creative volume, but very immediately following that is going to be creative diversity. So it's not just about adding volume and getting a whole bunch of more statics or just running a whole bunch of variant tests on ad creative units that you already have. It's really about creating unique visuals and unique messaging points at scale and being able to multiply that. If you're working on statics, okay, you're going to need more statics, more visuals, more imagery. That's a lot different across the different core formats. Of course, we have the features point out or call out ads, us versus them. You're going to need a lot more than that, than just the core formats. And, thinking about working with creators too, it also means more creators. Thinking about how you can also reach unique pockets of audience through, working with younger creators, with older creators, working with people that have really different backgrounds or really different content styles to be able to reach the masses, essentially.
What are some of these like big creative ideas that every brand should be testing or thinking about if they want to add more creative volume?
So I like to approach it from the angle of creative formats to test, because I think that's really easy for teams to attach onto that idea. So, we got grid style statics, we have TikTok style ads, we have features call outs, we have us versus them, creator based content, we have problem solution oriented content, we have content that's also feeding into core human desires. Really it all spins out from there. But I'd say I really like teaching the core formats first so that people can begin testing out different messaging points that end up already existing within certain formats inherently. So when you think about an us versus them format, for instance, that's already going to be using messaging that's predisposed to someone who's aware of the product, but also potentially aware of some of your competitors and showing how you can stack up against that person. If you're thinking about a problem solution oriented UGC angle, this is going to be someone who maybe doesn't even know that your solution exists yet. They just know they have a problem. They have a friction point in their lives. That's why I like to start there, because just by getting those core formats, you are actually getting different layers of the marketing journey. You're also tapping into different desires.
Like all these ideas, I'm sure people are watching this are like, okay, that's great. I want to do this. I want to do that. We should try this. How do you get organized? Where do you start? If you're a team and you're like, all right, I resonate with all these ideas. I want to start organizing my team or my creative to actually act on some. What's a good starting point?
So I'd say, number one, look at all of the core formats for static imagery, particularly. I think that anytime I'm approaching a team initially I like to do a cross analysis of what they can do quickly and what's going to have the biggest performance impact. And generally, statics are a lot easier to pump out en masse. And there are a number of formats and if you have your messaging dialed in a little bit, can really have huge implications on performance. In fact, one of the top performing creatives that I worked on last year that ended up having $4 million spent through it, generated almost $10 million, was a static ad.
Yeah. And so the context on why that number is important and spending through it is Meta optimizes spend based on what's working and what's performing. So if it spends a lot of money through it, it's not we spent all this money. It's this was a performer that spent money. So just some context.
Yeah, and the way that performance creatives think about it too is your creative isn't actually a winner unless it scales, unless you're able to push more spend by it. So sure, it may have come out the gate with a decent ROAS or a decent CPA, but unless you're able to get it to meet your other top performers, ultimately you're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
What's the kind of the toolkit that you use and work with when you're organizing ads? And I know you work with the Motion app. What is the kind of framework that organizes all this stuff for you when you work on projects?
So I like to look at the creative process really as a 6-step process. So it begins with research, and then it goes to road mapping, and then it goes to production, post-production, QA, and then analysis, and then it all goes back. And really at the beginning section in research, I'm beginning a lot of my research with motion or foreplay, and also just what is attracting me as a user. And I do a lot of in-depth research through customer testimonials, going around on Reddit. I feel like I'm just
searching TikTok for your brand name, which is, I go into all these brands all the time. I'm like, hey, have you ever searched TikTok for what people say about your brand? No, okay, we're just going to do that on the screen right now.
I'd say actually one of my favorite exercises is just looking at the type of creators that your customers love or that your customers can't seem to get enough of. And trying to become fans of them yourself so that when something pops up organically from them and you're like, oh, I could see how that could translate
And
really
a little
well.
pro tip for that, and as someone who I work in a lot of niches that I don't consume, which is actually I think feel like a good thing because then your own biases get really removed. But I start a new IG, I start a new TikTok. I only follow creators that are popular in that space and brands. And then you get to start have a feed that may not exactly mirror your consumers because they have other tastes, but really it's very illuminating as to how different it is from what you see. Because we all feel like, oh, other people see similar stuff to me online. No, they don't. It's actually radically different. And so I think it's just an important pro tip if you are doing some of that yourself.
And I think actually an easy, because I've heard that suggestion a number of times. I find the people that actually do it, I know you're one of them, is so slim. Take your best friend's phone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
if they'll let you. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
look at their Instagram and swipe through and see what type of targeting they're getting.
But that brings it to like the briefing process.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of these, every company does it a little bit different. What are your thoughts on that and how to make something that is actually good?
The briefing process like all goes back to research for me and like what we're like, what we've decided we're going to begin. And for me, it all hinges on the messaging and the messaging point or the angle that we want to drill down. One of my favorite things to do actually is to take messaging points or things that were really sticky that creators said in creator content and translating that into some of our static ads. It's one of the easier wins that I don't see a lot of brands doing. And this is actually how we got our top performing ad last year. Was one of the creators in the ad said, oh, I have to get ready for a Zoom call in 5 minutes. And I pulled that and I was like, okay, the 5-minute routine.
It's a hook, let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, and you change it up a little bit for a static ad, and you make it a little bit more digestible. You're not taking the exact diction that a creator is using,
but you just basically took it and was like, okay, this is a tagline now. Okay, this is a savable thing now.
Exactly. I sit down like every Monday morning and I'm looking at our top performing creator content and I'm pulling these things and putting them up on ads, and we've been seeing a much higher hit rate from messaging.
And it's funny, I recommend that in organic a lot too, because people will, there's just different types of consumers is one of my main things I talk to brands about. We're like, hey, if you have content that's mainly people talking or mainly not people talking, you have to understand that a large amount of your consumer base may not consume anyone ever speaking on camera. That's just not their algorithm, or they may, or vice versa. And then the video to carousel pipeline is like, I feel like a huge one where I'm like, hey, if you have a performing video, whether it's yours or influencers, if you just take that same message and break it into the bullet points and present it nicely visually, it's like a really compelling asset. And all of your winning messages, all your winning videos, you should be trying that like in that same. And so I like the idea you had at the beginning of formats, like, hey, what's a TikTok style, what's whatever, and then having messaging that goes across it, I think is a great way for brands to think about it.
Yeah, and I'd say too, it's funny what you said about carousels. It's the most underutilized performance asset. Every time I'm auditing an ad account, I'll see 5-10% being spent on carousels, if that. There's a few reasons for that, right? Because a lot of people think of carousels as a sequential format. If you want to tell that story, then you're going to have to, slide one tells this part, then it goes next too. But it doesn't have to your point. And I actually like to look at carousels as like a hack on creative testing. So if you have, 10 top performing images, see how you could put that into a carousel. Inside of Ads Meter, you can actually optimize so that the slide that shows up first is unique or optimized for each individual. So I kind of like think of it as like dynamic creative testing hack. And
be able to put 10 in there, see what ends up running
first. So we actually did just get a winner on a carousel that I'm very happy about. It does take a little bit more work, but we pulled from the top performing images to make that.
If someone wants to you want to learn more resources to actually dive into this, to take this stuff super seriously, where do you begin?
Number one, you have to become a student again. It's like something that I always go back to. And I think about it in terms of, think about the content you consume, think about the content that you listen to, podcasts. For me, if you are really interested in performance marketing, performance creative, I put out one YouTube video every single week that dives into the type of creatives you should test, the type of ad account structures that I'm seeing work with certain industries and certain ad spend amounts. But, I also really love Limited Supply, Nick Sharma's podcast. That's another great one. But also, as much as I really kind of hate X, it is where I get the most up-to-date information about.
Agreed. My bookmarks on X is probably the most impactful of all the bookmarks you have, as hard as the network is to work on.
And really figure out who the heavy hitters are in the industry, people who are actually running brands. My favorite people are the people who are founders themselves and that are really doing it day in and day out.
Any parting words, and kind of where can people find you online?
Yeah, number one, thank you so much for having me. It was great to meet and jam with you. You can find me at Dara Denny on Instagram, as well as Dara Denny on YouTube. YouTube's really my bread and butter these days. I'm really focusing a lot more on doing long form tutorial-based content.
Yeah, well, you can't. So many things you do, like trying to get it across in 60 or 90 seconds, is
No.
sort of a fool's errand.
No.
Yeah. But great. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, of
Enjoyed that.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now that we've talked to some experts about actual programs and considerations for what marketing looks like in 2025, I want to get tactical. If you are a marketing director who's creating a plan for your business, if you are a founder thinking about marketing for your new brand, let's break down how to look at it. So the exercise that I always did when I was a director of marketing, a VP of marketing, a CMO, is what I call a program matrix. This is where you actually list out every component of marketing, whether you're going to be attacking it primarily or not, and you actually make a plan. So a program matrix includes all social media by network. You'll basically make a list and you'll say LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Same thing with performance. You say, all right, we are advertising on Meta, we're advertising on TikTok, we do out-of-home advertising. All of those become aligned. Then every other marketing thing, so SEO, email, web, events, influencer, customer relations, if you have that. Put every single marketing program into a big list. Now what we're gonna do from there is actually put a summary, 1 to 2 bullet points of what our plan is. We're gonna identify whether it is a primary focus for us or it's a secondary focus, because this becomes important in a moment. We're gonna make sure that we have someone assigned as to who is responsible for this. And eventually, when you fully build out a program matrix like this, you can actually look at it and say, here's SEO, here's our KPI, here's what we're measuring for this. We wanna increase our organic traffic by X. Okay, here's our email. We want to drive X amount of revenue through email or engage in whatever retention. But every program having an owner, a goal, and then have it noted whether it's primary or secondary is really important. This leads me to point 2. Once you have an organized matrix like this, you're going to realize that you can't do everything, especially if you have a smaller team or a larger team that's really focused. You're going to say, hey, you know what? Our primary objectives follow the 80-20 rule. 20% of these drive the vast majority of our results. So maybe we shouldn't be thinking about an event program, or maybe we actually shouldn't be diving into influencer when really we're making a lot of money on organic ads, on organic content or through Google, whatever it is, and be okay with that. Because I feel like right now, a lot of CMOs, marketing directors will be asked, well, why aren't we doing X or Y? And what's our strategy for, X? And that is a hard question to answer when you have so much you have to deal with and so many briefs and all the considerations we talked about in this video. And I want to let you know that it's okay to not do everything, to look at that list and say, here's our primary objectives, here's our secondaries, and here's some that we just don't have a strategy for. It's not worth the time for us. And be able to show this matrix to the people in your company and say, look at all the things that we're considering, and this is why these are our priorities, this is why we're not thinking about this, so we can really put an emphasis on what works. So I want to make sure we're at least sharing some tactics here so you can think through how do you implement this in your company. Really appreciate y'all coming along on the ride with us and with Air on this kind of journey of what marketing and creative operations look like in 2025. And we have multiple more episodes in this series that dive into all kinds of different topics related to this, like art direction and social strategy, that I can't wait for you to watch as well. I'm Oren Meets World, and you can follow me on all platforms. Clayton is at Spreza, SPRE.ZZA. And we have a newsletter called Hyper, where we really dive into all of this in depth every week. You can find at mail.hyperstudios.us.